Military Affairs Commentary. Ladies and gentlemen, Japan has joined hands with Ukraine to create an entity capable of completely wiping out the most crucial strategies of both Russia and China. That is the very foundation that Russia has painstakingly built for its war plans over the past 3 years in Ukraine. And it is also the pillar on which China bases all its military scenarios for a potential escalation crisis in Taiwan. Now, a newly developed weapon possesses the power to neutralize both of those massive strategies at the same time. A machine smaller than a smartphone, but capable of moving at a terrifying speed of 300 kilometers per hour. This combination of power is something neither Moscow nor Beijing could have anticipated, and it is enough to throw both the Kremlin and Beijing into a state of utter panic. As soon as the news was received, the Kremlin immediately summoned the ambassador and issued an official protest. Meanwhile, Ms. Zakharova did not hesitate to call this agreement an act of open hostility. The relationship between the parties was declared to have dropped to zero just because of a partnership involving drones. Putin's extreme anger is the clearest evidence of how frightening this cooperation is. This is not a result that happened overnight. Ukraine has persistently knocked on Serban's door since 2024, and until March 31, 2026, the giant on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, Natera Drone Corporation, has officially crossed that line. This is Serban's first direct investment in Ukraine's defense sector. The center of everyone's attention is the Teja A1, a specialized interceptor drone that hunts enemy kamikaze drones right in the air. The cost for each unit is only about $2,000 to $3,000, while a Quequet missile costs over $1 million. The Shahed drone it's targeting also costs just a few $1,000s. Using $1 million missile to hunt down a cheap drone is nothing short of economic suicide. Ukraine has suffered deeply from this loophole for the past 3 years, and the Teja A1 is the optimal solution to that problem. Using drones to hunt down Shahed drones at a similar cost instead of burning money on expensive missiles. Serban expects 3 strategic layers from this relationship. First is to acquire valuable real combat experience in both hardware and software, which are constantly evolving every day in Ukraine. Moreover, this is practical knowledge that no advanced laboratory in the world can provide. Second is to combine this real combat technology with Serban's massive industrial production capacity. From the world's most precise sensors, top-tier scientific systems, to next-generation semiconductors, all aimed at rapidly expanding the scale of interceptor drone production. Third, and perhaps the most strategic point, is exporting this battle-proven technology to the global market, opening up an entirely new arena for the world defense industry. What caused Serban's decades-long caution to be shattered in just one night? The final trigger was the Hormuz crisis in Iran at the beginning of 2026. When the Gulf was completely paralyzed by swarms of drones, every alarm bell in Tokyo rang out at once. Serban received most of its vital energy supplies through oil tankers passing the Strait of Hormuz, and witnessing this lifeline being shut down by cheap drones proved a harsh reality. Neither the American protective umbrella nor mere peace laws could guarantee national security. But that was just the last straw, because in reality, Serban has been facing 3 nuclear powers at the same time. In 2026, that security equation reached its critical threshold. In the southwest, China Coast Guard ships appeared around the Senkaku Islands with record frequency in 2025. Almost every day, like a systematic war of attrition, Serban's military planners understand very clearly that in a crisis in Taiwan, China will fill the sky with tens of thousands of cheap drones. Destroying them with million-dollar missiles is unsustainable, but if it's done with Teja A interceptor drones, which cost only a few $1,000s, it's completely feasible. The Teja 1 is an asymmetric long-term solution designed to neutralize China's numerical advantage with extremely high cost effectiveness. China has already developed similar long-range suicide drones, such as the FL-300D model from Norinco, which has a range of 2,000 kilometers and costs about $10,000 each. When facing mass drone threats, traditional air defense systems will definitely become financially exhausted. The solution that Serban adopted from Ukraine directly targets that life-or-death equation, and its impact on China goes beyond technical aspects, reaching a grand strategic level. The deep integration of Serban with Domino is showing Beijing how quickly the Western alliance can unite with Asian allies when a crisis occurs. For China's plans in Taiwan, this is a haunting preview, and Beijing understands this well, which is why it has reacted strongly to every move by Serban with accusations of militarism. The more intense the reaction, the more it proves that those moves are effective and accurate. From a broader perspective, the bridge between Serban and Ukraine also reveals the practical limits of Putin's so-called unlimited friendship alliance. While Russia is putting all its efforts into fighting in Ukraine, China's closest strategic neighbor, Serban, is quietly adopting the opponent's technology to begin mass production on an industrial scale. To the north, the geopolitical map is also filled with unresolved issues for Serban. No official peace treaty has been signed between Serban and Russia since World War II, and the dispute over the Ukrainian archipelago remains an open wound. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has pushed this relationship below zero, and Moscow officially declared in February 2026 that there would be no further peace talks with Serban. As the deepening strategic alliance between Russia and China squeezes Serban between two great powers, North Korea's relentless ballistic missile and drone tests add a third layer of threat. Serban is simultaneously facing off against three nuclear powers: China, Russia, and North Korea. This complex equation explains why Tokyo is pouring significant investment into a multi-layered, intelligent, and highly flexible air defense network. Russian Foreign Minister Mr. Lavrov accused Serban in January 2026 of returning to the military nationalism of the 1930s. However, the context of this accusation is absurd and full of contradictions. A country bogged down in the war in Ukraine, with casualties nearing 2 million, is accusing the Serban self-defense forces, who haven't fired a single shot since 1900, 54 of being aggressors. Even if Serban were to double its defense spending, that figure would only account for about 2% of GDP, a very modest number compared to Russia's war economy, which has exceeded the 7% threshold. Tokyo's response is not a risky confrontation, but rather to build an indirect technological bridge with the experts who understand the opponent's tactics best, namely Ukraine. Ukraine's hard-earned experience in defending against Russian drones, sophisticated electronic warfare tactics, and swarms of SAED is the perfect piece that Serban is looking for. And this transfer of knowledge is not a one-way street, because Serban's advanced semiconductors, ultra-precise sensors, and leading artificial intelligence capabilities have the potential to completely transform the nature of Ukraine's drones. When maritime drones like Medusa or Sea Baby, which have already confined Russia's Black Sea fleet to their ports, are equipped with Serban's top-tier navigation systems and night vision technology, they will evolve into perfect autonomous hunters, completely immune to Russia's electronic warfare jamming measures. The Kremlin's unease about Serban is now no longer limited to this technological bridge. Tokyo used to be the only country in the G7 bloc without a clear anti-espionage law for many years, and it was this loophole that created fertile ground for Russia's intelligence activities. However, the anti-espionage bill on Takaichi's government's agenda, along with the plan to establish a new national intelligence agency, is directly aimed at completely cutting off Moscow's information flow right in Serban. The fact that Tokyo police identified and exposed an S-class spy from Russia in January 2026 is considered a clear warning sign. Tokyo's move is not simply about strengthening its own national defense, but it also breaks a political taboo in the Asia-Pacific region that was once considered unchangeable. The strong message sent out is that if a peace-loving Serban can do it, then all of us can. And this message is resonating powerfully throughout the entire region. The place where this domino effect is felt most intensely is Taiwan, which is directly in the sights of China. The Taipei government has already made secret agreements with Ukraine regarding drone technology, with the ambitious goal of producing 50,000 domestically made military drones by 2027. Taiwan is more eager than ever to learn from Ukraine's valuable battlefield experience. The decisive leadership of Serban has created a solid political shield, allowing Taiwan direct access to Ukraine's most advanced drone laboratories. Moreover, despite Beijing's harsh threats for Taiwan, this is not simply about purchasing military equipment. It's a race for survival to establish an independent defense industry ready to face the scenario of a complete blockade by China, while also absorbing hard-earned knowledge tested in the most brutal real combat conditions. Meanwhile, South Korea's equation, though more complex, is no less vital for survival. Seoul is currently a major powerhouse in traditional arms exports, with its renowned K-2 tanks and K-9 self-propelled howitzers, but they have also bitterly realized that they are falling behind in the era of drone warfare. They have witnessed heavily armored tanks in Ukraine being torn apart by cheap drones costing only $500. Korean technology corporations are urgently shifting their focus to anti-drone systems so they won't be left behind in the race with Japan. The initiatives and strong support from Japan and Ukraine are creating enormous pressure, making their historical rival, South Korea, unable to maintain a state of strategic hesitation any longer. Tokyo's active role in global security has set a strong precedent, prompting Seoul to consider easing its ban on direct arms sales to Ukraine. If South Korea decides to release its massive stockpile of 155mm shells to Ukraine, Russia's logistics across the entire front line could collapse. Under pressure and strategic competition from Japan, this process is unfolding faster than ever. This has resulted in the largest defense budget in Japan's history, with over 9 trillion yen, equivalent to about $58 billion, of which the allocation for drone defense alone accounts for up to 100 billion yen. Prime Minister Takashi Sani, who is nicknamed the Iron Lady, is the chief architect of this great transformation. Her mark is evident in every strategic move, from doubling the defense budget to loosening restrictions on arms exports and maintaining a tough, uncompromising stance on the Taiwan issue. This partnership on drones is the sharpest reflection of that change. The reason the Kremlin reacted so harshly is not just about a single drone, but because of its strategic significance for both Japan and China. Japan's move has shattered a political taboo in the Asia-Pacific region, one that was thought could never be changed. The strong message spreading throughout the region is that if a peace-oriented Japan can take action, then all of us can too. The first domino to fall was Taiwan, aiming to produce 50,000 domestically made military drones by 2027 and in great need of Ukraine's combat experience to strengthen its own capabilities. The most profoundly transformative aspect of this technology transfer is its two-way nature. As Ukraine's constantly evolving combat experience flows to Japan, the most advanced semiconductor components and artificial intelligence from Japan flow back to Ukraine. Maritime drones like Maguza and Seababy have already confined Zasir's Black Sea fleet to their sheltered ports. Now, when equipped with Japan's navigation systems and night vision technology, they will evolve into perfect autonomous hunters, completely immune to Zasir's electronic warfare countermeasures. While Zasir is struggling to remove chips from washing machines to keep their war machine running, Ukraine has direct access to Japan's most advanced processors. This technological asymmetry between a Ukraine equipped with Japan's space sensors and a Zasir fighting with Iranian drones or South Korean ammunition will certainly change the course of the war in the long run. Building a rocket engine is one thing, but producing the chips and guidance sensors for it with millimeter-level precision is Japan's area of expertise. And now all of that is in Ukraine's hands. In return, Japan gets a golden opportunity to test its defense industry in real wartime conditions, a verification mechanism that no laboratory can provide. Putin was wrong to think that NATO would get tired and that Asia would stay out of it, because Japan has shattered that assumption. Asia's leading technology powerhouse has abandoned its neutral policy to join hands with Ukraine, breaking an 80-year-long peace taboo. The old rules of war are being rewritten on the Ukrainian front, and the most attentive students of these new rules are the technology laboratories in Tokyo. This is also a devastating blow to the oligarchs and the elite. The doors of the Tokyo stock market have slammed shut in the faces of those who have long moved their assets out of London and New York to seek refuge in Asia. Japan has carried out a systematic asset hunt, freezing the assets of more than 130 key individuals and organizations, from Prime Minister Misistin to aluminum tycoon Viktor Vyacheslavov. The confiscation of about $32 billion in reserves from the Russian central bank has shattered the oligarchs' dream of investing billions of dollars in the Tokyo stock market. Now, for an oligarch, making a transaction in Japanese yen is even harder than going to Mars. When global money flows were tightly locked, Dubai was once considered the last neutral paradise, but under pressure from Japan and US sanctions, this place is also becoming a golden cage. Even banks in the United Arab Emirates have started freezing Russian accounts out of fear of sanctions. The rats are trying to abandon the sinking ship, but there are no ports left in Asia for them. Along with greed, this financial crisis is causing extreme panic inside the Kremlin. When Putin's closest associates see their assets disappear and become increasingly dependent on government contracts to survive. These loyalties are now hanging by an extremely thin thread. The shock waves from this geopolitical earthquake are hitting Russian households and wallets directly. The Defense Technology Transfer Agreement signed with Japan, along with tightened export restrictions, has pushed Russia's civilian economy into a real technological ice age. Caught between the spiral of inflation and low-quality goods, Russian people clearly feel that this war is not only failing at the front lines, but is also falling apart in their everyday lives. 92% of the population feels they are surrounded by enemies, but that's not patriotism. It's an overwhelming fear of isolation. A great Russia that Vladimir Putin once promised is gradually turning into a version 2.0 of North Korea, a country completely unable to produce its own technology, cut off and isolated from the world. The triumphant cheers that once echoed throughout the Kremlin now have to give way to a terrifying silence in the face of the cold winds blowing in from Tokyo. Vladimir Putin once promised that invading Ukraine would make Russia greater, but the result has been completely the opposite. Today, Russia is crashing into NATO's steel wall in the west, while being strangled by Japan's technological and economic blockade in the east. Putin's fortress is now surrounded on all sides. Every door has been sealed, and it is turning into a decaying ruin from within. Japan's historic move has made an undeniable truth clear. In the new global order, the price of aggression is not just condemnation, but total destruction. As Russia's military power melts away on the Ukrainian plains, their economic future is also sinking into the Pacific Ocean. The outcome of this war is no longer in doubt. The light signaling the end of the game is shining directly on Russia. The war has returned to Putin's own home, destroying his economy and strategic dreams, burning everything to ashes. There is no place left that is safe. Russia is more isolated than ever, and the real nightmare has only just begun. So, what are your thoughts on this matter? In your opinion, is Japan's direct provision of military technology to Ukraine the final turning point that will determine the outcome of this war? What do you think about a device costing only $3,000 USD being able to neutralize billion-dollar military strategies of major powers?